Okay, so I'm going to be focusing on the work that we've done over the last 18 months really in Northwich as part of the Love My River programme. Just a little bit of background about what Love My River Northwich is. It's a community volunteering and schools engagement programme. It's only been operating since autumn 2016, but we've developed each year to try something new each year, and kind of this time last year or just a bit before, we started picking up on SuDS in quite a significant way for us. It's quite small scale stuff, but I think there's a lot of lessons we've learned from it, and hopefully that might be relevant to some of yourselves. I have to thank the Environment Agency for all their support in steering us in the right direction with the project and funding everything that we've done, apart from some of the more recent activity which has come from other sources. So the overall aim of the project is about engaging the community in identifying why our local rivers, the Weaver and the Dane, are failing under the Water Framework Directive, and developing actions to improve their health and the value to local people. So I'll just give you a little summary of what the project is, what the Love My River Northwich programme is all about, just to set the scene for the SuDS. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Northwich, but we're in the northwest, kind of to the south of Liverpool and Manchester, to the east of Chester. And we're part of the Weaver-Gowie Catchment Partnership, and Northwich is sort of towards the top of that. And in terms of its geography, we're on two rivers, the River Dane, which flows in from the east, and the River Weaver, which flows in from the south. And between them, they bring a lot of water, which has implications for flood risk for the town centre. So that's one of the reasons that we're interested in SuDS, but I'll come on to how that really fits together in a minute. This is a picture of the River Weaver flowing through the marina, and the bridge there, Town Bridge, is where both the Weaver and the Dane flow through. So you can see it's a very narrow opening for the river to flow through. Basically all the water in that southern part of the catchment comes through there. And the most recent flooding was in October just gone. And again, this was after the flood defences were installed, and this is basically the drains backing up as we were talking about earlier on. So definitely a case for SuDS on the basis of reducing flood risk, but also a case in terms of dealing with some of the pollution risk. This is the reasons for not achieving good status in the Weaver and Dane, Weaver and Gowie catchment, and pollution from wastewater up there at the top is the biggest one. So we're particularly interested in where we've got sewer overflows and things like that. So anything we can do to address that is part of what we're looking at. So our Love My River project aligns with the themes and objectives of the Weaver-Gowie Catchment Partnership. So that's about developing robust evidence, improving water quality, managing water quantity, and engaging with businesses and communities, and enhancing and promoting natural aspects of the catchment. So just a few examples of the work we've done with the Love My River project. Our walkover surveys was the first thing that we did, really. It gave us a chance to get the volunteers and myself very familiar with the catchment, and we went and investigated the probably about 20 kilometres of rivers and small streams over the first year of the project. So we became very familiar with where all the sluices and weirs, all the outflows, and we got very familiar with where we've got sewage overflows as well. So very, very much concerned with that as an issue. We've done a lot of citizen science activity with the adult volunteers, but also with schools as part of the Northwich River Guardians project, which is what we're doing at the moment with funding from the Royal Society of Chemistry. So we're testing for basic parameters there, and we're gradually getting a bigger picture of what the issues are, especially in terms of water flowing into our local rivers from the outfalls, which take surface waters from the urban area. We've done our fair share of controlling invasive species, And one of the projects that we've really enjoyed doing is creating some floating habitats using a proprietary system from BioMatrix Water, who very kindly came and ran a training day for us on installing all of this. So that's worked well on a couple of locations in Northwich. We've also had funding towards developing the Weaver-Gowie story map. Some of you in the Rivers Trust might be familiar with these. It's a way of representing on a GIS system all our projects and the issues affecting the catchment. So within the themes about improving water quality, there's a couple of different projects that apply in different localities really. Within Northwich we have, Northwich the town has developed over many years really. It's quite an old town, goes back to Roman times, but the developed areas have developed partly through the early development of the town was through the industrial development of the salt industry and the navigation through along the River Weaver navigation in the late 19th century, early part of this century. So they're all on combined sewer system. But there's a lot of new developments happening, as there is everywhere. And in those separate sewer systems in those newer areas, we've got the risk of obviously pollution from the likes of misconnections and surface water drain pollution. So in those areas, our strategy is mostly to do with our Connect Right project, where we're raising awareness of the issues around misconnections, and also the Yellowfish project, which some of you might be familiar with. So we do a lot with schools and youth groups on marking up the surface water drains, roadside gullies, with Yellowfish, following the EA project guidance there. But in areas where we've got combined sewer systems, our main work to contribute to improving water quality through our project, the Love My River project, is about recognising the risk of combined sewer overflows contributing to water quality issues, and we think that our contribution through SuDS is going to make at least would demonstrate to the community at large what could be done on a bigger scale and make an impact. So here's some of the projects that we've been working on. We've done a demonstration excavated rain garden project at Castle Community Centre. At our Grow Zone community garden project, we've done a seed and roof, and then we've done a couple of schools, SuDS planters, and at a youth centre in Northwich, another SuDS planter with a soakaway. So I'll just go through those in a little bit more detail. So the excavated rain garden at Castle Community Centre, the partners involved in that are Age UK, who are the premises managers, and they run all sorts of activities there. It's a very busy centre, lots of wellbeing activities there, and they're developing the gardens in quite a big way now too. The Environment Agency obviously provide the project funding. Us as Groundwork CLM are project design, management and volunteer coordination, and we're very lucky to have a number of volunteer groups that work with us regularly. So there's a couple of conservation volunteers from conservation volunteer groups from Crewe and Vale, which is a very local area, and then the volunteers from Grow Zone Community Garden and Love My River itself have all participated in the project. So on this project we're aiming to reduce the risk of pollution from the combined sewer overflows by diverting as much as possible of the rainwater that falls on the centre's roof away from the combined sewer network, and provide some rainwater collection and storage for use in the centre's garden. We want to create some seasonally wet habitat to benefit wetland species and pollinators, create some new attractive sustainable low maintenance features within the garden, which is under development, and we're involved with the Northwich Northwest in Bloom entry, so we very much wanted what we do to tie into that. So we're looking to adapt where possible existing best practice, as in current literature provided by Syria, and also examples from the RHS, very good advice on rain gardens, and to create a learning opportunity really for all the partners involved to demonstrate opportunities that we can replicate elsewhere for multi-benefit SuDS. So this is where you see some of the volume. Sorry, can we go back more? If you do that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the first stage of the project at Castle Community Centre was install some water butts, and there's 4 water butts which one attached to each of the downpipes from the gutters, and it's a linked system so that they're actually connected by pipes underground, so that they act as one reservoir, which works quite well, so that they're connected to the underground pipework that links then to the rain garden through just one overflow. We were very concerned to build a system which, if it failed in a way that didn't cause a nuisance to the centre. So there's overflows back into the sewer system, which mean that any water that doesn't get away down into the rain garden, it will flow back out into the system. So on this one, for instance, this one goes back into the drain if it overflows. This one, you'll notice, is at a lower point on the, again, that's the outfall to the actual rain garden. So we have to think quite carefully about how to construct that so that it took all the water to where we wanted it to go. Sorry, it's on the wrong way. Okay, there's a couple of photos missing from there actually, which show the construction in progress. But you can see there some pictures of the volunteers digging the trenches to install the pipework for the project. The other projects show the other pictures that are missing from those gaps of the excavation in progress. So this was volunteers from the crew and Vale Royal groups busy doing that. Mostly older volunteers that are involved in conservation projects once a week, every week for years. The next project, the next pictures show the system that we used to distribute water from the pipe that comes into the rain garden evenly within the rain garden. We very much wanted to make sure that it soaked evenly into the area, so we created a system which used a series of buckets with holes drilled so that it created also a silt trap. So we were very aware of the risk of the pipework silting up. So the water butts in the first place provide a silt trap. So as the water overflows the water butts into this system, it leaves the silt at the bottom of the water butts. But these two, the silt, any silt getting into the buckets here will accumulate at the bottom as the water flows out of the holes, and they can be desilted if need be. And they're also wrapped in teram to stop any soil getting into the system back through the buckets. So you can see there's work going on in all seasons there, and the final project, we're very pleased with the effect that it, after a rainy day, we found it collects the water very effectively, and planted it up using the guidance from the RHS Rain Garden Guide, and it's worked very well. So this project has had a knock-on benefit that the Vale Royal conservation volunteers who are heavily involved in the construction of the project have since become regular volunteers at the centre to manage the gardens as well. So there's knock-on benefits from that. So we've done some school projects as well, and youth centre projects, creating these familiar rain garden planters, and our objectives here. On the project partners listed again with all the different schools, Environment Agency funding, similar volunteer involvement. And here we're aiming to reduce the risk of flood pollution, risk of pollution from the combined sewer overflows by soaking up rainfall from parts of the school or youth centre roofs and releasing it slowly. And we're using some information, some best practice guidance from Melbourne Water, which I think has been quoted in the past by perhaps Thames 21 in some of their work. But the next slide shows the Melbourne Water design. So basically we've tried to replicate that as closely as possible, and it's proved its worth really. It's worked quite well. So we've done that in a couple of locations now. The planters have been built either by volunteers or involving the school children as well. Where it's possible, we've included some water butts, and 2 volunteers there are real regulars with us, and they've done lots of the work on the different sites. This is the Charles Darwin Primary School, and this one worked very well. It's in a nice full sun area of the grounds. We decided to go for the rain garden planters here because the practicalities of creating a channel to an excavated rain garden in the field nearby was just going to be too expensive. We didn't want to have to dig up the playground in order to put those pipes in. But doing something like this has worked quite well, and we planted up the planters with the children from each of the classrooms that are right next to it. The only tricky thing was finding drain pipes that actually matched the ones that were already there, so we didn't quite manage to get a match. The colour's slightly off, but it kind of worked. The one at Northwich Youth Centre had the benefit of some lawned area very close by, so we did actually build a soak away. So you can see here, as this one drains away, it goes into the ground and goes to a soak away just the other side of the paved area. And but we wanted to make sure that if that soak away in real extreme times started to become a problem, became too wet and was flooding the rest of the ground, we could divert the pipe back down the original surface, the original drain, combined drain. So we built all of this really with caution, because it was the first time we'd done it all. So we were very keen to make sure that we weren't going to cause a nuisance at any point in the process. But having done all of this, it's proved its worth really. We've not had any real problems. The one thing I would say is I'll probably use bigger pipes in the future if we can, just to make sure we've got more capacity. Okay, so the SuDS Roof project we did at Grow Zone Community Garden was an easy one for us because it's our own site, and we just worked with our own volunteers, and the crew group came in to help us. And our aim there again was to reduce the risk of pollution from combined sewer overflows by soaking up the rainfall. And we were very keen on having some new habitat, benefiting pollinators, new attractive feature, again contributing to northwestern bloom. And it has seemed to have made a benefit in terms of reducing the fluctuations in temperature in the sheds that we've put the roofs on. So it stops it being so hot in the summer and so cold in the winter. We used a proprietary system for this, which was from a firm called Green Roofs Direct that supplied a system that seemed to do everything that we wanted to. So this is their little diagram of how their system is made up, and it worked really well. And you can see here the containers, two green shipping containers on the left there before we started any installation. And then first thing was to create like an upstanding rail around the outside, and plywood, smooth plywood base to the roof system. Installed some pond liner with an overflow hole, and then it was a case of applying the proprietary system, which came palletised like that, and it's just a case of laying the different layers out, rolling out the cedar matting, and very simple to install. And it's really proved its worth again, because whenever we get rainfall, it soaks into the roof, and it carries on dribbling out for days rather than all washing off at the same time. So it's a few key considerations and lessons learned from the overall project, and I think, as we've probably covered in some of the earlier presentations, the importance of support and trust from all the partners involved. Given the task when we first set out of doing this small program of SuDS work, it seemed a straightforward offer. You know, we just needed some community sites which we could work with. But as it turned out, the ones that we ended up working with were the ones that we'd already worked with, to try and contact people that we hadn't worked with before, and try and explain SuDS. It was a harder task to do than it was to get in there with people that we already had the trust and support from. So the schools were ones that we'd already done Love My River projects with. The community centre we'd already worked with because they'd done some work with us to learn a bit about our community garden. The only one that we really had to bring on board from the start was the Northwich Youth Centre, and we're fortunate there that the guy who's the chair of trustees he's a retired drainage engineer, so he knows all about this. So it kind of helped the process along that he knew about that. The capacity, skills and appropriate support of the community volunteer workforce was key to what we did, and we basically worked within our capabilities. We didn't take on anything that we felt was beyond what we knew we could deliver. So again, maintaining the trust through not taking on more than we could chew. And planning in systems to mitigate against the potential problems was important to me, because I just don't like having to fix things afterwards, really. So dealing with things about what to do with overflows at times of peak rainfall, or taking what steps we needed to avoid siltation and blockages in the pipework. We're very keen to maximise the multiple benefits, whether that be the aesthetic, habitat and wildlife, and obviously the links to other programmes like the Northwest in Bloom programme. We got a Silver Gilt Award last year, by the way. We're just a smidge off of gold, so we're really hoping to push that a little bit further this year. And doing some learning in advance using the published experience and working out what was feasible from the the guides was really valuable. There's still quite a lot of stuff that we had to work out for ourselves though, and what size pipes to buy, finding the right size tank connectors and all that kind of thing was kind of thing that anybody involved in this kind of practical work has to deal with all the time, but you very often don't find that in the initial guidance. And obviously we needed to make arrangements for ongoing maintenance and monitoring. So in most cases that's taken account of by the fact that we have ongoing involvement with these sites, and these are our kind of demonstration sites. So we're very keen to make sure that these are maintained effectively. So our involvement, so long as we have the Love My River project going on, will make sure that these get maintained. But beyond that, the schools are well equipped to maintain it. The community centre is well equipped because they have a good team of volunteers, and we've done some handover information with them so they understand well how to deal with any issues. And the final challenge really is developing opportunities to expand beyond this demonstration project scale to achieve some more meaningful impacts on reducing the pollution and flood risk. So what we're really hopeful for is that through our partnership in the Weaver Gower catchment, we're going to be able to continue to develop these programmes, working with United Utilities and working with the Environment Agency to meet all sorts of other objectives that they have within their programme. So we've got meetings planned where we're going to have the chance to try and roll this out further. So thank you very much, and that's my contact.
When you're working with the volunteers, you're generally working with the volunteers that you know well and that you trust and that you've worked with before. How would you go about trying to get other people involved?
Well, we've had to involve them. All of them have had to be recruited and engaged at some point in the process. So what we would typically do is try and work with existing groups rather than try and recruit a load of individuals. Really from that reason that was mentioned at the end of the last presentation, that funding starts and then it stops and then it starts up again, and it's very difficult to run a volunteer group on that basis. And we start the first year of Love My River, we recruited a load of people to come and do a load of walkover surveys with us. But at the end of that first year, we didn't know if we were going to get any more funding, and the actual work programme was completely different. So the volunteers that had been involved in that didn't necessarily want to do what we were going on to do. Some of them have, but a lot of them haven't. So what we've been doing since is working with existing groups. Now that might be the groups that come and work with us at the garden, or it might be groups that are associated with sites that we're wanting to work with. So a good couple of examples are the Friends of Marshall's Arm, who are a group involved in a local nature reserve site. So we have projects that we want to work with on that, with them. So again, I've done presentations with their group about the full range of activities that we do and specific site site visits and meetings to do with particular things that we want to do. So it's very much trying to work with existing groups rather than creating a whole new group that you can't sustain.
I just wanted to ask what sorts of jobs you got your volunteers to do. So from the images there, it's hard to tell which ones were staff members, but it looks like they did quite a range of sort of technical.
Staff member was taking all the pictures. Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We're all volunteers.
I mean, for our project, obviously, it's mostly planting, maybe some planters and things like that. But it looks like some of your volunteers were doing quite technical stuff. How do you maintain quality? I guess in the construction.
It's training basically, but every job is different, and every task that you come across, you just have to make sure that the people understand what it is that you're trying to achieve in the day. But because we're working with volunteers who have got quite a lot of experience of a range of practical tasks, it's not like you're starting from scratch. So if you ask people to dig out a pond-shaped hole, they know how to do that effectively because they've done it many times before. And other people, if it's about installing water butts, well, actually, we've done that several times before on other projects before we started thinking about SuDS. And that's not difficult with volunteers who have done similar work before. And we have the benefit that if we start a new project with a new group, some of the volunteers who have been involved in other projects will come along and be sort of a backstop for things that the new volunteers might not be able to work on. But the capacity of volunteers is huge, and I would always recommend involving volunteers. And I would never use the word using volunteers because that doesn't work. Involving volunteers is a great way to go forward with these projects, because people who are not paid to do the work are more concerned with the quality that they achieve and the end results. Because it doesn't matter to them how long they take, or whether they make mistakes along the way. Pay somebody to do it, and they are limited by the time that you're paying them for.
And Pete, regarding your SuDS roof, did you have a hot summer, and did you have your roof installed before then, and we're looking at putting SuDS roofs in on some schools. Is that one you'd recommend if you have a nice long summer? Some of them are very shallow, aren't they?
It's done better over the summer than it has over the winter. It stayed a bit too wet over the winter. It was fine during the real dry spell. We got it really wet in the because we installed it March last year, and we watered it quite well for the first 6 to 8 weeks, and by then it was well established, and we didn't really water it that much over the summer. And but because it's SuDS, it copes very well with dry conditions. I think I'm going to have to, I don't know, it'll probably come back when it goes dry again, but at the moment it's sat in too much water, so it's patches of it are dying out, so I might have to think about that. Maybe put a few more holes in the lining or something. Yeah.